Farmers are collecting a lot of information on their farms: yield data, soil maps, as-applied information. What do you do with all of that? In our Tech at Work series, we're trying to get to the bottom of some of this. We spoke with Dr. John Fulton, Extension Agricultural Engineer at Ohio State University, and he walked through some of the things you're collecting and what you might want to get now to make sure you're ready for the future.
When I think about considerations around what I would call prescriptive ag, where I'm going to have to be collecting data, I'm going to have to be storing, organizing that data on the farm, I think you got to start, like you mentioned, at the basics. When we think about just the technology itself, guidance today for most guys is pretty much like air conditioning. It's there, but it's, do I have those capabilities of doing variable rate? Do I have section control? And when I have those capabilities, I also have the ability to start collecting those coverage maps, or as planted, as applied maps, and then ultimately those yield maps. And those are some of the base layers that we think about. And if I can begin to collect those with that technology and what I call doing a kind of a field by field database, and I start building history, that I might not think about using them today, but we got to think about the future with some of these services, this prescriptive ag, things like multi-hybrid, variable rate. You know, we've got to have and sort through data to evaluate those, to improve them on our farm, because we all farm a little bit differently, and so prescriptions are going to have to be site specific or to that farmer and their practices they use.
Dr. Fulton talked about the infrastructure, the way you're collecting information, how you should collect that information, and what kind of tools you might need to make sure it's getting from the cab to the office where you can start to do work with it.
One of the limiting factors today of really utilizing data is the fact of getting it off of the machine. I use the number, probably 80% of the data that we think about that's being collected on those machines reside on the machines, or in some cases aren't in an actionable form. They've been downloaded onto a card, but has that card ever been put into a computer, organized? So I still think there's a high percentage of the data that just aren't in an actionable form. And I think about resolutions of that is, number one, I think from a data stewardship at the farm level, the farmers need to be thinking about storing data, just archiving it year by year. If nothing else, building a folder on a laptop or desktop, whatever there, a hard drive, and just saying 2015 and throwing everything in there and having that available when the time is right and you're comfortable to start sorting through that and utilizing it. So that's one very simple way. But then we have the telematics, and I mean, there's a lot of excitement around telematics or wireless solutions. But one of the issues there is most of those are built on cellular connectivity, so we know that's been one of the issues, at least in rural America here, to utilizing that technology. So we got to think about where can we have Wi-Fi, and some guys are setting up their own Wi-Fi networks. But the other idea I would also contend is a lot of guys at the farm office have a lot of that connectivity there, and you can come up with some pretty simple ways of I collect it in the field, but when that machine gets back near the field office, it can download very easily into some either cloud or right to my my database, wherever I'm doing that, and I can do that seamlessly, and that really helps them put that data in an actionable form.
Laura Donaldson, product manager from John Deere, talked about how important Deere sees the infrastructure that farmers have available to them to make sure they can maximize the information they're collecting on their operations for sharing and for putting it to work to make better management decisions.
John Deere is very committed in the infrastructure space around rural broadband. We want to make sure that the customers have the capability to access a strong either cellular service or wireless internet service at their home. And a lot of times when companies are looking for the areas that they want to continue to build infrastructure for rural broadband, they want an area where there's a large people population. But we're looking at the tractor population and the equipment population that has a cellular modem in it that's transmitting data back to that cloud system.
So how then, I mean, Deere's not going to put broadband on every farm. How does Deere try to engage that conversation with people who can make that kind of thing happen?
Absolutely. We've actually started with the legislator level, and we had a field trip to the farm event, is what we called it, out in the Washington, D.C. area, where we brought in legislative staffers to a customer's operation and had them experience a trip on the farm and a day in the life of a farmer, and understand why there is that need for rural broadband support in areas where the population may not be as high as a metropolitan area.
We've been collecting information on the farm with our combines and our sprayers and our tractors for more than 20 years. It's information now that we've got together that'll help us better manage our farms, both for sustainability and for economics. This is important that you make sure you have the infrastructure you need to get the job done. I'm Willie Vogt, and that's Tech at Work.